So I prepared my paper.
Right.
By marking in the horizon and where the tallest of the buildings are going to be. I'm now going to wet the page totally. Doesn't matter quite so much up here, but definitely where the buildings are and where the reflections will be. This is working fairly quickly, otherwise you'll dry. So I've got a nice covering of water on the page, a sheen, but no puddles. You know it's working because the page is now buckled. Ah, here we go then. So dipping in, let's see if we can come down. So just getting the card and just touching it in. Don't need to load it as such, just touch it. Otherwise you're going to have too much on. I'm going to start off with the tall one. I'm holding the paper down so, and just touching. Trying to be straight. Remember, the building's going to look silly. I'm just touching where it goes. I'm pulling it across slightly. Now you see that I've got a gap there. That's fine because you don't always, if there's there's some windows there, you won't see the building so much. And that's my tallest. It's got to have a little cone hat on, but we'll do that later. Right, I decided to have another one here. So I'm just touching it again. I'm pressing a bit harder this time so that I got the paint that seems to be missing. And again, up here, just touching it. Oh, I've made a different shape. That's fine. Dip in again, just reload, touching this bit here. And I said another tall one here. So that's basically my tall ones in. I'm going to swap to the little bit of card now. So I'm picking up more paint. I'm looking at what I did. I'm going to do one here. And yeah, I'm dipping that in some water because I want a fairly wet one so that it disappears a bit. No, that's not it. And it's just doing various shapes as you work your way along. Try not to put your hand in the ones that you've already made. That's a lighter one. That's a good one because I want that for the background. And there's one behind there which is lighter. I've got a little bit more water on the card instead of neat paint. There's a low one there that goes across. Right. Come do some foreground ones. It's a low building which goes half across where there. and a bit of an aerial goes up. So just use the card and just do a line. A little bit of an aerial there. A low one there. With most of these buildings will have aerials or aerial or multiples aerials. So have a weak and washy one down the back. That will dry a lot lighter than the others. And you can do different textures. I'm going to do one over here, which is tall, but I'm just going to do lines down. And I'll join the top up in a bit. A small one there. Right. I'm using water on the card so that it moves the paint a bit more easily. There's bits of the paper that it doesn't, the paint doesn't stick to, which is fine. So just see, some of mine have gone fuzzy, which is fine. This area here is completely diffused, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's just an abstract, really. Where else do we want something? I can do a little building there. I'm going to put an aerial there, so it's just touching it. I have a very light one at the back there. Basically, it's rectangles of all sizes. Okay, where have we got to now? I want a little light one up here. And if you've got any gaps that you think, oh, perhaps I should have something in there. So I'm now tapping with a light mix of pigment, just the other sides of the buildings, just to say, well, this is actually where the building stops. Because on some of the rectangles, the paint run out before we got to the end. I keep dipping in and getting a very thin film on the credit card. There's that one there, that one there. Finish that building off there. Building there for the gap. Finish that building off there. Got paint on my hand. That building stops halfway. That was the first one I did, and it didn't take the paint just down there, so I'm just joining it up because it looked like it was floating. When we finish with that, we can then get a little bit of the reddy brown color that we're going to use, or plain brown or whatever, to drop in just a few red marks. The brownstones are usually the lower ones. So I've got one little bit there. I'm going to do a bit here and across the front of that. And a bit here. And one more. We'll use this one. This is a smaller one. Just a tinge of red. Been a bit heavy on those, so I'm just going to blot up slightly. It's got dry, so it's been a bit heavy. Now, if you didn't get all your aerials on that you want, now is the time with your rigger just to stick a few on. Most roofs have got one, if not more. And resist the urge to tidy. Because it doesn't, it's an abstract. It's nothing like New York actually looks. The last thing we've got to do with this side of the paper is to draw or paint in this pointed bit. I'm going to draw it with a pencil. This was my tall building. It's got a flat cap. It doesn't come to a point, and it comes down to the building. And it's also got another line. I'm not sure you can see that very well. So it's like a pyramid on top of the skyscraper. So I've drawn it. I'm now going to paint it. So it's darker this side because the sun's coming from the right. Now put some water, clean water, damp brush, and just pull that the other side. So we've got a top on there, and then it's got to have an aerial. So I'm just joining that one up because it's got gaps and will look as if it's floating away. Oh, and I've got to do this one over here. Oh, I said I was going up to there with it, but I won't because it'll be as tall as that one. Right, so I'm just half completing them. When we've done that, I'm now going to wet underneath with a large brush or a larger brush and just touch the bottoms of those buildings. Hopefully that will start moving the paint in a bit. And then I'm going to just paint or just put water on underneath them all. And really, it's dried too much, so we have to help it. So we've got paint under there. With a small brush, pick up a little bit of the paint that you were using and just wiggle it down. So I've not got very strong pigment on, and I'm just wiggling it down for not all of them, but for the tall ones definitely. And I've got enough water on now that it's bleeding out, as it were, which is probably not a good idea. And just running a few lines through with my brush whilst it's still wet. And we need a little bit of that alizarin crimson just here, reflected, and back to the Payne's grey, just pulling it down. And this one here. And this one here. Would help if my shadows or my reflections went straight. Got a small one there. A lighter one there. A bit more paint, not a lot. A light one there. A darker one there. Onto there. Go into a little bit of your red and just drop a little bit of the red way to reflect where you've got red in the buildings. Then with a damp brush, go backwards and forwards horizontally. I've turned my paper because I have to work like that, so that it pulls the reflections and makes them wiggle and shimmer. Just making that into a building and not just a line. So anywhere you see that it should be perhaps darker than some of them, just put a little bit more paint. You've still got some drying time left. So, and the darkest one of all should be the main the main tower that we started off with. God, this one should be darker because the paint is diffusing away so that it's getting lighter. So it's a case of just going round again and dropping a bit more in. That one's not got anything in at all. Completely missed that one. Just check that you've got reflections where they should be. This is, I suppose, where the fiddling comes in. That's it. That should do. And I've just, with clean damp brush, I've just gone over the reflections with light horizontal strokes, just to give it the idea that it's water there. And usually I'm just going to put the sky in last. I'm not going to do a great deal. I'm just going to wet that left right hand corner of the sky. Not even going to go down to where the buildings are. Just at the top there. Get some of the Payne's grey and just pull a couple of strokes across. That's all we need, just some strokes coming out of that right corner. You can make them a bit darker if you wish. It's just to give the idea that it's not a very sunny day in New York. And then the last thing to do is look to see where your paper isn't wet and put a New York pigeon in. Because I'm sure that New York must have pigeons. I've just put one in. That's all I need to do. And that